Many greetings to you all at the Abingdon Eco Fair. My name is Rob Hopkins from Transition Network, and I'd like to particularly thank the Abingdon Carbon Cutters, Mayor Bowring, other councillors, and everybody who's come out on this day to help celebrate this fine occasion. So I was asked just to give a few words, I suppose, about what transition is and why it might be a useful addition to what's already happening there in the vital, thriving community of Abingdon. So transition is something that started here in the small town I'm speaking to you from today in Devon of Totnes, and has now since spread to 44 countries around the world, thousands of groups in different places, who are really seeing the challenges of our time, climate change, the increasing sort of domination of our retail economy by a smaller and smaller band of retailers, the whole question of the end of the age of cheap energy and all that cheap energy has made possible, and the idea that actually maybe growth isn't always the best thing. Our current obsession at a national level is how do we make economies grow? How do we make the UK's economy grow again? But I think there's a real question there about whether that's something that we really want to do. You know, if our children grew and grew and grew and just carried on growing and sort of through the ceiling and carried on up, you know, we'd be really rather terrified by the whole business. If the plants in our garden just grew and grew and grew and grew, after a while we'd sort of chop them down. I think that was rather disturbing. You know, actually what we want for our children is that they grow to a point which is kind of reasonable, and then they grow in other ways. You know, they grow, they become wiser, they become kinder, they become more skilled, they become deeper individuals. You know, there's not many people who what they wish for their children is that they get more and more and more and more and more stuff every year of their lives. So I think, you know, this idea that economies grow forever in spite of the fact that we live on a finite planet where energy is becoming more and more of an issue, where climate change is something that is really, really urgent and very, very frightening, is just a nonsense. So what transition groups are doing are looking at maybe what a post-growth world might look like, a low-carbon world might look like, a world that's not so dependent on cheap energy, and where we've kind of gained back control of the economies of the place that we live, rather than the economy being something that is just done to us from outside. So transition is really, I suppose, at its core about this idea of resilience. How do we design into our communities and their economies the ability to withstand shock from the outside? And indeed to go beyond that and to say, can we see community resilience as a form of economic development? And that's what we're starting to see now in transition groups. You know, many of them start with smaller projects, local food projects, planting productive trees through the town perhaps, skill shares events where people swap things they know how to do with other people, just make those freely available to people. But what we're seeing now increasingly is, as transition grows, that a number of places are really starting to see their future lies in creating a new economy for the place, a place which is really built around those values I set out earlier on. So in Brixton, for example, they've started Brixton Energy, which is a fantastic community-run energy company. They've now run 3 share launches. Each one has put solar PV on the rooftop of a different housing block there in one of the poorest, most diverse parts of inner city South London. The most recent one, Brixton Energy Solar 3, raised most of the money from people actually living on the estate. For all the money that's invested, they create training opportunities for local people. They create energy efficiency measures in the building. It's a really great example of bringing people together to make renewable energy a key part of how the place regenerates itself, rather than just outside companies coming in and doing that. In Bristol, the Bristol Pound, which was kicked off by Transition Bristol, is now working very closely with the City Council. The city's mayor takes his full salary in Bristol Pounds. You can use Bristol Pounds to pay your council tax, your business rates. You can spend them on the city's buses. You'll soon be able to use them to buy green electricity. It's really become a key part of the economy of the city and is inspiring many other cities to look and do the same thing. They have printed notes. They also have a pay-by-text scheme, which is really pioneering and is open source and can be taken up by anybody. You know, and I've been hearing about the Abingdon Hydro scheme, which by the day you have this meeting, you'll have heard whether it got this planning permission or not. When I'm filming this, we don't quite know yet, but fingers crossed. And these kind of initiatives where the community is offered the possibility to invest in and benefit from community-owned renewable energy is really, really important and really exciting. And it's no accident that when Secretary of State for Energy and Climate Change, Ed Davey, decided to launch his community renewables revolution, he chose to do that on the rooftop in Brixton at a project that had been set up by Transition Brixton. Here in Totnes, we're really working on this idea of community resilience as economic development. We run an event every year called the Local Entrepreneurs Forum, where we bring together entrepreneurs and we invite the community, and the idea is, what does it look like when a community gets behind its entrepreneurs? We have 4 businesses that pitch their ideas, the community get to ask them questions, and then they're invited to support those businesses in different ways. And we really see what that looks like. And I've never been to an event around economics before that can move people to tears with the whole power of the whole thing. We had 4 women who came along who were running a market garden, who wanted to expand it and make a community-supported agriculture scheme. They needed £1,000 to do that. They went home with £3,500, offers of support for making promotional videos with their accounts and so on, and 30 members of a vegetable box scheme they hadn't even launched yet. And that's really what it looks like when a community gets behind to try and make this happen. We just opened a Reconomy Centre, an incubator space for the new economy in the town. And I'm very involved with a project called the Atmos Project, working to bring an 8-acre derelict site in the town into community ownership to develop it as the heart of a new economy, as a real catalyst for what we really want to see here. So these things start small, and in many transition initiatives, those small projects are what you see first. But increasingly, we're seeing this growing ambition and saying if we want to see a new economy, we need to be the people who step up and make that happen. So if Abingdon decides that it wants to embark on this transition journey to weave the transition approach into what the great work that's already happening through the Abingdon Carbon Cutters, then there's lots of resources there, there's lots of support, there's a whole network of many hundreds of these projects in the UK who have been doing this for a while, who can offer their support, their advice, their insights. There are also many transition groups who are doing some really good sort of working together with their local council. Here in Totnes, we recently did what we called an economic blueprint for Totnes, where for the first time we mapped the economy of the town. Where does all the money go? How much does this town spend on food every year? How much do we spend on energy every year? How much do we spend on care for the elderly every year? And actually means that and how much of that is spent through local businesses, how much of that is spent through supermarkets and chains and so on. It means for the first time we're really able to map and put a value on the shift to a more local economy. So we know, for example, here in Totnes we spend £30 million on food every year, of which 22 million goes out through just 2 supermarkets, 17.5 through just 1 supermarket. So that's more than half of what we spend a year goes out through 1 supermarket. So, but it means now we can say if we could manage a 10% shift, that's £2 million a year coming into our economy every year. That's the cavalry that comes riding to our local economy's rescue. That is community resilience as a form of economic development. And that's really powerful. And one of the really powerful things about it was we did that study with the town council, with support from the district council, with the Chamber of Commerce, with the local schools, colleges, development trust. That's when you start to see these bodies come together and see the future lying in us building the economy of the future on the foundations of our local independent economy, rather than just how do we expand the supermarket economy even bigger. So I think actually what we see increasingly around the country and around the world in transition is this idea of community resilience as economic development, of that being a really exciting, really empowering story for the future. And here at Transition Network we stand ready to give whatever support we can to Abingdon in this important work that you're embarking on. I hope that the planning permission came through positively for the hydro scheme. I hope you have a really fantastic day, and we look forward to hearing all the stories of all the wonderful things that will come out of Abingdon over the next few years. And no doubt in about 10 years' time there will be a blue plaque put up outside the Guildhall to mark this historic day when so much that turned the economy and the fortunes of Abingdon round was catalysed and kicked off on this glorious day. Thank you very much for your time and enjoy the rest of your day.